Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello students, welcome back to the lecture series on women's writing. This is lecture number 11. By now we have discussed a lot of things related to the women's movement, what we call as feminism, or other movements which have taken part or has contributed to the sensitization of women's issues throughout the society. In this particular lecture, we are going to talk about the manifestos. Manifesto, what is a manifesto? We are going to discuss that, and why is it necessary to think of them as a separate section of contribution. Everybody has written a book or two. Many of the women authors, they have contributed through literature, through music, through dance, the performing arts, the stage, the theatre. Many of the mediums have been taken into consideration while thinking of the women's writing or the women's movement. But there is a special place for the manifestos. Originally, this word was related to basically the revolutionary movements when an idea comes into being and it has some characteristics. It posits some options outside which these things cannot work. Those things are grouped together and are called manifestos. Every movement has their own manifesto. If today in the class I discuss and then declare that this class is going to follow certain rules and regulations, I will have a document, I will have some written rules and written commandments, should I say, that the followers should follow. So that kind of document or that kind of mentality is a part of the manifesto. So manifestos in women's writing are very significant because that is something based on which many things have been written. Many areas have been searched and explained and explored. All of these things come under certain rules and regulations, certain ideas. Those things have been grouped together and written in the manifestos. And moreover, whenever we talk about manifestos in women's writing, that means that there is a kind of idea out there in the society which the women writers, the women researchers, the women philosophers gathered, logically explained and put it into words. And that is how the course of the history was moved from one direction to another. Let us move on with the first slide. A small definition of the manifestos, again from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. I follow this dictionary mostly because it keeps itself updated to the trend, to the fashion of thought, etc., etc. A written statement declaring publicly the intentions, motives or views of its issuer. So it is always a written statement. Now I would like to draw your attention towards the act of writing. We have discussed it before. When you write something and when you speak something, these two are different actions altogether. Like I am speaking to you, you are the audience, you are listening to me. But after some time, you will notice that mostly what you did was read the slides, whatever was written. Thereby, you are giving more preference to the written letter, this M, A, N. These are the letters. These are the letters of the English alphabet. You are giving more preference to whatever is written on the slide, which is displayed on the screen of your computer system or mobile, wherever you are accessing this video from. Instead of listening to me, you would rather see a slide, you would rather understand what is written. Why is this preference to written language? Let me give you a small example. If you say that I am good in maths, or I am good in English, or I am good in history, is it enough to prove that you are good in history, maths or English? Of course, if you say that to your teachers will immediately access your score in the term papers. How much did you get? Out of 100, oh, you got 60, 60 is average. Oh, you got 80, 80 is more than average but less than, brilliant. So that becomes a problem because you have something of a written document, a report card, a result in front of you. The viewer would like to trust that document instead of trusting your statement that you are good in English or maths or any other subject. Again, take another example. Suppose I am selling a piece of land. If I just ask somebody, okay, you give me 2 lakh rupees and I am going to give you my piece of land, is that going to stand in a court of law? No. All the time the lawyers will be involved, the registrars will be involved, and they will do a lot of paperwork. They will write down which land, what are the coordinates, geographical coordinates, what are the numbers which has been assigned to that particular piece of land, and that land, what is the measurement of the land, everything will be documented. Everything will be written on a piece of paper, and then at the end your signature is most vital, very important. Your signature is that point where they will think that, okay, now the person has signed and all of the things have been mentioned before. This is now a legal document. Now this is under the law. Now you go, or I am selling the land, I go and say, no, this is my land, I don't know who this person is. So the person who had given me the money for the land, that person will come and say, okay, see, here is the document. This is the document, and see, here is the signature at the bottom. So this is your signature. You have sold me the land for this amount of money. And the court will say that yes, this property belongs to this person, because that person has also signed it. So in order to make a document legal, in order to make a document public, everybody should know that we give preference to written language rather than spoken language. Written language gets the preference because it is a proof, it gets the preference because it is a record which a person can keep and show, right. So therefore, a written statement declaring, now it is a statement. There are different kinds of sentences. It can be a question, it can be an exclamatory sentence, all of these sentences are there. So statement is a very important part again. Statement gives information. This particular word, it means I am taking this lecture. Are you hearing? Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? This particular sentence is a question, but I am giving this lecture, I am delivering this lecture. This is a statement, because whoever is hearing this sentence gets an information, okay, this person is delivering a lecture. I have a cat. You are a very kind-hearted person. These are all information, but alas, my result is very poor this time. This is not a statement. It has this word called alas in the beginning. So that means it is showing some kind of emotion. If you say just go and shut the door or switch off the light, that is again a command, it is not an information. It is not an information in the sense it has other purposes also. Those other purposes are the main target of the statement, the sentence, right. But in this case, when you say a statement, it is just an information that this is what it is, and whoever is reading that must know these things. Declaring publicly. Now when you talk to the public, you declare certain things. For example, the politicians, they declare, today in this village all of you are going to get electricity by the end of the day. Although that does not happen, but that is like declaring. You declare that this state is free from polio. That is a declaration, and the public gets that idea, moves forward with that idea, spreads that idea everywhere. Do you know this state is free from polio? Oh, do you know electricity is coming to our village? So, whenever a person declares something publicly, it becomes a public idea, public opinion, influences the public opinion, right? Now, what are these manifestos declaring? They are declaring the intention. What are the intentions? What intention am I writing this? What is my purpose? They declare the intentions, they declare the motives. What are the things that I am going to gain from writing this particular piece of manifesto, or views of its issuer. If I am issuing a manifesto, then I am giving the public my views. My view is that the economy of this country is not stable and I need help from other countries. This can be a manifesto which has been issued by a president, by a higher authority. They are giving the views. What are the views and intentions and motives? What are they going to gain from it? So, the entire thing consists of many other small reasons why these motives are there. They have subsections and they have explanation, they have details, they have research. All the data are incorporated into the body of the manifesto. In case of women's writing, we have some very important texts. Let me draw your attention to the fact that I have used the word can. These are not generally called manifestos, but they have the proper, they fit this particular definition. With these works of art or philosophy or literature which are in front of you right now, Mary Wollstonecraft, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, with strictures on political and moral subjects, published in 1792, Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own, published in 1929, Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex, published in 1949, Kate Millett, Sexual Politics, published in 1970. All of these works have something or the other of this definition of manifesto. They show the spirit of the age. Here I have also mentioned that what the age was feeling, what the age was feeling, what the women of the age were thinking, how they wanted the world to change its course, how they wanted the society to act in a certain way. All of those things they have taken, they have analyzed, they have used their skills of research, they have used their skills of analysis. All of these things they have taken into consideration and have come up with these wonderful texts. These texts in their time, like in the late 18th century, early 20th century, late 20th century, all the time they have represented their age. We will discuss these texts in details, and like I have mentioned here that they are very important texts from the perspective of women's writing. Rights. I originally titled this lecture as Writing About Rights, but there is a problem with this. I reconsidered it thinking that let us not talk about rights in the very first thing, because these texts, they have the rights mentioned in them, that the women must have these rights, the women must have these rights. But most importantly, these are not legal documents, they are not the constitution, they are not the penal codes of the country. They are more like information giving documents, so that the government of the country consider the rights of the women of their respective country and incorporate them into the constitutional being. That is why I have here mentioned 3 waves of feminism: right to education, suffrage, right on one's own body, right to earn money. All of these things are small baby steps that these philosophers have taken. They have addressed these issues in their works, and they have paved the path for the rise of the women's movement. Of course, you may call it feminism, later on it transformed into gender studies, women's studies and gender studies. That is a different path altogether. But the first point I have mentioned is here 3 waves of feminism. Please refer to my first lecture of this series. I have given details of the 3 waves of feminism. I am going to give it again, not the details, but a small reference in the upcoming slides in this lecture. So, you will not have any problem understanding the situation. This is one of the most vital rights that the women writers who were writing their important texts, like I have mentioned over here, a room of one's own, the second sex, sexual politics, a room of one's own, and Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication on the Rights of Women, with strictures on political and moral subjects. This book and A Room of One's Own, these 2 books specifically talk about the education background of women. Suffrage, vote. If a woman is not casting her vote in selecting the government of the country, then that woman has no political privileges. That woman is not considered a citizen, that woman is not given the privileges a citizen enjoys, not the freedom the citizen enjoys, not the job opportunities the citizen enjoys, nothing. So, suffrage, that is vote, right to vote, is called suffrage. It is one of the prime pillars of feminism or the women's movement. Once the women started voting, their pleas were heard, their appeals were given ears. Everything they had to say was considered null and void before they had the right to vote or the suffrage. It is also called as universal suffrage. That is, the women must be allowed or granted the right to vote alongside men. So, before suffrage, everything was considered a kind of stopgap arrangement. Oh, women, they do not have any political opinion. They cannot have any political opinion because they are not educated enough. So, right to education. That is what started. Mary Wollstonecraft especially, she started this movement that women must be educated. She herself was self-schooled and she learnt a lot. She attended the lectures of her father, who was a diplomat. So, she had the privilege to education. But the women of her era, they did not enjoy, even if they were the daughters or the wives or the sisters of diplomats or politicians, they did not have the same kind of privilege that Mary Wollstonecraft had. Mary Wollstonecraft also married William Godwin, who was again a political diplomat of the country. So, she was in that kind of situation, in that kind of environment where she could write and write for the best for the women. Right to one's own body. This is something which is completely essential. This right was denied for a long time. For a long time, women did not have the right to their own body. They were not allowed to choose their sexual partners. They were not allowed to choose the time when they wanted to become pregnant. They were not allowed to choose how many children they must have. Everything was decided by the family. Even if they could not bear a child, if they did not want to marry, all of them were tortured. And max to max, they were sent to the church, they were sent to some prison or a treatment or whatever. So, their right to their own body was denied to them from the very first. That is, I am talking of the civilization. Before civilization, what happened? We will talk about that when we discuss Simone de Beauvoir. right to earn money. When you have the right to earn money, you have the right to say something in your family, because your family is sustaining itself on your labor. When you have a say in your family, you can say, yes, the women in my family shall have education. When the women in your family is going to school, to college, to university, they are getting educated. Now they are claiming we must have the right to vote. If they are enjoying the right to vote, then again they are also enforcing the right, the opportunity for employment. So it is kind of a circle. Here is a small summary that I promised to you that I will give. Proto-feminism. I have used a word over here. Proto-feminism. Why proto-feminism? Because the time, the 18th century, that is from 1701 to 1799, this period, they did not have something called feminism. Nobody talked about feminism. Feminism was not discussed. The word was not discovered. But there was somebody named Mary Wollstonecraft who talked about the right to education, right to rational education. Because at that time, women were taught conduct books. Again, if you want to know more about conduct books and how women should cook, how women should clean, how women should dress up, how women should serve the food, how women should fold their handkerchief and keep their hand over it while eating, what is the amount of, what is the curvature of the lips while she is eating, everything was detailedly discussed in the conduct books. How she should make her hair, how she should put on makeup, how she should dress, how she should wear dresses which are very tight, so that the male admirers will be very much attracted. All of these were part of the conduct books. If you have a husband, your first duty is to feed the husband, care for the husband. If you have a child, your first duty is towards the child, then the husband. The woman has no duty towards herself. So all of these things were being written when Mary Wollstonecraft was still alive. But she wrote the book Vindication of the Rights of Women. There she talked about the right to rational education. We will discuss it in details in the upcoming slides. In the first wave, that is from 19th to 20th century, the women's suffrage took the center stage. Again, I discussed suffrage is the right to vote. So, women's suffrage was mostly discussed by Virginia Woolf. She said that political privileges gives an amount of credit to the women to become a responsible citizen and to decide the fate of the country. Once she has the power to decide the fate of the country, she will be heard in all the podiums of life. Second wave, 1960s, legal and social equality. Simone de Beauvoir. Simone de Beauvoir talked about the equality which was not there in the society, and why it was not there has also been discussed by her. When we discuss her book, The Second Sex, we will be talking about those. Third wave, 1992, individuality and diversity, 1992 onwards. That time Kate Millett was writing. Kate Millett is again a very staunch feminist, and she wrote how the women were represented in literature, film, cinema, movie, theatre, everywhere. In the 1990s, what happened? Everywhere you must be aware with the phenomena of item songs and item numbers, where women are showed on screen with less clothes and the camera moving from the hair of the woman to the toe, and that is slowly. All of these show the kind of imagination that the author or the director wants the audience to have. They are projecting that to look on a woman this is the way you look on look at a woman. The director is teaching the audience, this is how you should look at a woman. So, these are the problems in literature also. When women were written about, their beauty was described, their frailty was described, how sensitive they were was described. Nowhere they are described as proper equal human beings. So, these kind of inequalities still persistent in the 1990s took away the individuality of women, took away the identity of women. They were not there to begin with, but even after Simone de Beauvoir wrote The Second Sex, there was a discussion, but these discussions were just put aside to make way for this kind of proposition that women are objects, right? Individuality and diversity. Now, this word, although I am a woman and I associate myself with a woman who is in Africa, a tribal woman in Africa, but both of us are women. We have the same kind of anatomy, we are the same kind of biological creatures, but my facial features, my hair, my dress, my culture is completely different from that woman who is in Africa. Her hair, her racial or characteristics, her facial features, her skin tone, everything is different. So, how can we consider that she is just like me? She is not like me. Accept it. Or I am not like her. I have also accepted it. But people, they group all the women together. No, women are this, their likes are this, their dislikes are this. That is the problem. When you group all the women together, you are annihilating, you are just discrediting any kind of diversity that can be present within women. I like to drink coffee, that woman likes to drink their ritual drink which is offered in their temples. So, that is the difference. There is a difference of likes and dislikes, there is a difference of orientation. The way I am attracted towards a male person or a male person is attracted towards a female person in our society may not be the exact way the women have seen her reality. In her reality, maybe marriages are not there. They are just, they go to a place, they pick a bride and that is it. There is no courting, there is no wooing. So, why are we always very eager to generalize? See, this is the problem. Diversity is compromised. Compromised means that we do not agree with diversity when we start generalizing. Once we start generalizing, it becomes a solid mass with no variations. Once there is no variations, then there becomes a code of law that this is how women behave. Behavioral psychology is something which was discredited just because generalization should not be there. Of course, there are certain ways, there are certain things which are directly related to the biology of a woman's body, but apart from that, you cannot discredit, you cannot dismiss the cultural upbringing, right. So, the last wave which is still ongoing, it is a kind of a wave which is mostly associated to social media. The Instagram posts, the Facebook posts, the WhatsApp statuses, the Instagram reels, Snapchat reels, the video feeds, YouTube channels, everywhere. All of the social media, the entirety of the virtual reality and our being as cyborgs. I have talked about cyborgs in the last lecture. If you want, you can refer to that also. So, the entirety of our virtual existence has turned towards the battling women's oppression since 2012. Now, everybody, in the sense I mean every woman, have now taken up the center stage and have started talking about their emotions, started expressing their emotions, their desire. Oh, I have discussed desire in lecture 11, you just can go and have a look at it. So, all of these things have taken place after 2012 and it is still continuing. Now, a little bit of details on the people that we have talked about so far. The timeline, the historical timeline, 1759 to 1797, she was there, and like I mentioned previously, she is a proto-feminist just before the rise of the feminist movement, just before that. That is why proto, that is pre. This is the name of the book, you can memorize it and you can also go and read about this book. This was actually a reaction to another book written by a diplomat who presented it and read it and said that women do not need any kind of education, they do not have the capacity of solid reasoning, they do not have logic, they are very emotional beings, they should not be given the right to vote. All of these things that person said, and Mary Wollstonecraft came to the center stage. She said no. She wrote this vindication of the rights of women with strictures on political and moral subjects. She talked about women's education. She also criticized sensibility because people at that time thought that women had weaker nerves. Our nerves, we have nerves in our body. At that time, medical science was not that enhanced. So, there was a disease or is still a disease called hysteria. Hysteria is a kind of epilepsy where the entire body starts shaking, your jaws shut, sometimes if you are careless your tongue may just be cut by the teeth. All this happened due to the deficiency of diet and nutrition or some genetic disorder. But at that time doctors believed that women had hysteria because their nerves were weak. That was their hypothesis, that was their big reason, very reasonable beings. But of course that is not true. They thought that because their nerves were weak, their nerves were susceptible to all kinds of sensations around them. And men are strong, men's nerves are stronger, they are not susceptible, they are not easily affected by the environment around them. That was their idea. Therefore, sensibility was something which, if you have more senses, of course the five senses, touch, smell, listening, hearing, seeing, all of these five senses, tasting of course, these are because there are nerve endings, right. Men also have those nerve endings, but that time the doctors thought that the nerve endings of women were more receptive. They were very much affected by the environment around them. Just because that they were overburdened with stimuli and after some time they would collapse because of hysteria. That was their big reason. But that is not the fact. So, sensibility was something which the people of that time thought women were because they had weaker nerves. So, in this book Mary Wollstonecraft says that no, sensibility is not what makes women weaker. Sensibility is something which makes women even stronger towards the family, how to bring the child up, how to care for the old and the new in the family. Sensibility is a gift, it is a strength, it is not something which is a weakness. And after that she said, rational education for women, contribution towards the society. Rational education, not education on recipe, not education on making the salad, not education on making the bed or cleaning the house or mopping the floor or decorating the interiors. These kind of educations were those which were written in the conduct books. Mary Wollstonecraft said that this is not that is we are going to do. We want proper education for women that includes studying of science, arts, languages, literature, everything, so that they contribute to the society. They make a valid contribution. Women educate children, they educate the children of the house. If the women is educated, if the women are educated, then they are likely to bring up the child in a better way. They are going to educate the child right from its very childhood before the child enters the boarding schools. So, at that time the child will have a proper educational background and can become a very responsible citizen only if we educate the women. Companions to husband rather than just wives. What is the difference between companions and wives? In our society, we cannot think what a wife is. What a wife is or what a wife was when Mary Wollstonecraft was alive. At that time, wife was the interior decorator, wife was the nurse, wife was the nurse for the grandparents of the house, wife was the cook, the cleaner, wife was the person who would satisfy the sexual needs of the husband and bear children. These were the purposes, these were set rules and patterns that were written in the society, these qualities which are the best qualities in a wife. If a wife wrote literature, she is a bad wife. If she was good in performing arts, earned her own money by performing, she is probably a prostitute. If a wife wanted to have a hobby, she is wasting time. She is not a very good investment. All of these things were the mentality of that age. In today's world, we cannot think about it. We have that amount of education. We have given that amount of education to our daughters and sisters. Even old age education is available. We have educated our mothers and grandmothers. You will be very happy to read a small short story by Sudha Murthy, How I Taught My Grandmother to Read. It's a very beautiful short story. It's available on the internet. If you want, you can go and read it, where the grandmother is taught by the granddaughter. The granddaughter, she is a very small girl, she knows how to read, but the grandmother cannot read. So, the granddaughter, the grandmother is very fond of story reading or listening to stories. The granddaughter used to read her a story from a journal. The journal used to be published every week. It was a weekly journal. So, one day the granddaughter went away to school or some other parents, some relative's house. So, the grandmother wanted to know how the story went. She went and asked her granddaughter, can you please, when granddaughter came back, she went and asked, can you please teach me? Please teach me how to read, so that if you are gone, I will be able to read that story. So, that granddaughter started teaching the grandmother how to read. After she has learnt how to read, the first thing her granddaughter bought her was the novel that she was reading in the journal. After the journal has published the whole novel periodically, it was then published as a book. So, the book was bought by the granddaughter, she gifted it to the grandmother. The grandmother was able to read the title of the book. She was so happy that she bent down and touched the feet of the granddaughter, that you are my guru, you have taught me how to read. So, it is a beautiful story. If you read it, it has more subplots, it has more elements in the story. You will be very happy to read that. Okay. Now, coming back, so companions are those who equally contribute to the husband's work. If the husband is a businessman, then the wife is going to take care of the business when the husband is away. If the husband is in a job, the wife is going to help with the paperwork. If the husband is in some other kind of institution, the wife knows exactly what the husband is doing, and if the husband is absent, the wife can go and take care of that. That is companion. That is what companionship is. Similarly, if the wife is working somewhere and she is sick, the husband can take over. The husband can comfort. If the wife is not at home, the husband can take care of the child also. So, this is companionship, and this is what was missing in that age. Now, moving on to another author, Virginia Woolf. The timeline is 1882 to 1941. She is a British author, of course, a modernist author. Now, we will slightly digress and talk about modernism. Modernism is very important because, of course, for understanding the manifestos, because one manifesto led to another manifesto. One manifesto written by Mary Wollstonecraft, she influenced some people, she influenced some women. Those women influenced the other women who were in the upcoming age. So, the grandparents, they influence the mothers influence the daughters. So, generations are influenced. Now, in this particular, in case of this particular author, Virginia Woolf, she is writing in the early 20th century. She is writing in the peak of modernism. So, whatever the proto-feminist Mary Wollstonecraft has already done, she is starting from there and moving forward. Notable texts of the modernism, of the modernist movement, it is not, this is written by T.S. Eliot, this is written by James Joyce, and this is written by Virginia Woolf. These three texts were considered the pillars of modernism in literature, of course. What are the characteristics of the modernist movement? Let us have a look at it. Why? Because again, let me tell you, much of what Virginia Woolf has to say is directly related to the modernist ideals. Desiring the past, the old, the tradition. There is always a faithfulness towards what has already gone. Is it that the entire society was wrong? No, the entire society was not wrong. They had very good things in them also. There were many scientific discoveries at that time. Most of the scientific discoveries, of course, after Newton, that is after gravity, many things were discovered, in a chain-like reaction manner. So, science was developing in a rapid speed, technology was developing, many things were getting easier because the industrial revolution has already taken place. Things were moving much faster, the world was spinning a lot faster at that time. So, the modernists, they cherished the old familial values, because now the family is disintegrating, the family is, the grandparents are staying at the village and the young generation, they are going to the cities, they are staying over there, they are working there, to their limits. At that time they are earning a lot of money, but the family has broken up. There is no big family, they are now small units, packets of family, which we generally refer to as atomic families. So, back then there used to be a big family, all the relatives used to stay together, right. So, traditions were there, customs were there were many ways in which people used to keep everybody happy, reflecting on the futility of the present situation. When modernism was on the full-fledged rise, that is in the 1914 to 1918, this is not the age of modernism, this is World War I. This is the First World War time, and that time We know how many millions were killed in the battle and how many families were just shattered. Many people died, women were left homeless, shelterless, villages were burnt. The countries were fighting, the politicians were well. The politicians did not have to go to the battlefield, but the common people did. They went to the battlefield, they lost their limbs, they lost their life, they lost their sanity. They came back mad. They came back like geometrical figures because they did not have their limbs attached to their body. They came back shell shocked. They came back with post-traumatic stress disorder. Every time there would be a sound of, let's say, a balloon bursting, they would be traumatized because that sound had kept them in that terror-stricken state for many months when they were fighting. So, futility of the present situation. So, when in the 1922 these works were published in 1922, when these works were actually published, so these works when they were finally published, they had all the terrors of the war inside them, but not in words, but in the representation of the characters. The characters were depressed, the characters had no way they could speak what they were feeling at that time. So, all of these are characteristics of modernist writings. That is why they were preferring the old, the traditional state where everybody was at peace, where there was no war, accepting the worst. Modernism thrived on this belief that whatever has happened, let us accept it. There was a war, we fought the war, we lost the war, we won the war, there were thousands and millions were killed. Everything has been done, let us move forward now. Although by that time they did not know that there was a second war coming in 1939. They did not know about the second war, but they tried to move on. Also, you will be very surprised to know that there is a person called Charles Darwin. He came up with the idea of natural selection. What is natural selection? Origin of Species. This is a book, a very significant book which was published before that. Before publication of this book, everybody was very happy. They went to the church, they went to the masses, they went to praise Jesus, they went to praise God. They had full faith on religion. But when Origin of Species was published, Charles Darwin said in this book that we are not the gift of God to earth. No, we have evolved from monkeys, and every creature on this planet is a protein accident. We are not some children of Adam and Eve. We are not creation of Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwar. We are not creation of Allah. All we are is a protein accident, because a protein molecule, it started mutating and creatures were born. That is how the entire planet has changed over the year. We are all protein accidents, we are not supposed to be here. So, those who followed this book, and Charles Darwin went to an island called Galapagos, he made all sorts of experiments, he came up with the ultimate truths, and everything that he published in this book destroyed the religious belief of the people. They became, this is one of the first scientific books which were written. I hope you go and read Charles Darwin's life, it is very exciting. He was nowhere close to a scientist, he was just a sailor. He was a young child, he went on a boat and he started sailing around the world. He came up with these ideas and he destroyed religion forever. So, Charles Darwin, Origin of Species is that kind of a book. If you read it, you will not believe in religion after that. So, many people read that book and they lost faith in religion, they now became scientifically oriented. Then what happened? Religion, okay, religion, they negated, no religion, we are going to the science. Okay, fine, science is great. Now science is developing, technology is developing, weapons are being made. Instead of instruments, instruments of course in industry, weapons were also being made. So weapons were being made which resulted in World War I. So those people who had originally started believing in science saw that science is killing people. Religion was killing people, science is also killing people. So now these people, where are they going to go? They cannot go back to the religion because they know that religion has no scientific base. They cannot come back to science because science is evil, so they are hanging somewhere within. This was the entire idea of modernism. That time Virginia Woolf was writing. She also came up with the Bloomsbury group of writers. If you just look up, you will get to know a lot about her. She was writing the stream of consciousness narratives. These are some of the books which are written by her. A Room of One's Own is the manifesto that Virginia Woolf had written. In that book, she talks about a woman who must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. If she wants to be established as a writer, as a fiction writer, she must have these two things. A private space, a private time, that is, she must have a room where she keeps her things. Nobody is going to come and say, oh, my things are also here. No, a personal room. Private time, your time is family time. No, my time is my time. I am not going to entertain what my family is going to do at that time. Women's identity apart from mother, daughter, sister and wife. Everything she writes in a room of one's own. It is kind of a manifesto, I said, and it was originally published as a lecture. Not published, it was delivered as a lecture. She talks about Judith Shakespeare. She invents an imaginary sister of William Shakespeare and thinks what she would have become. And there she also directly refers to lesbianism. That lesbianism, that is homosexuality. She talks about homosexuality in this book. So, manifesto in that era after the modernist movement has become, this book was published. Again, I will give you a small writing which was against this manifesto, not against, it is kind of an expansion or an exploration of this particular book called A Room of One's Own. Virginia Woolf in her book A Room of One's Own wrote that in order for a woman to write fiction, she must have two things, certainly a room of her own and enough money to support herself. What then are we to make of Phyllis Wheatley, a slave who owned not even herself, the sickly, frail black girl who required a servant of her own at times, her health was so precarious, and who, had she been white, would have been easily considered the intellectual superior of all women and most of the men in the society of her day. So, Phyllis Wheatley is a character which contradicts or rather expands on whatever Virginia Woolf had said. Just consider those statements and consider this statement. Simone de Beauvoir, Simone Lucie Ernestine Marie Bertrand de Beauvoir, she wrote a book called Second Sex. This is again one of the most influential book that was ever written on the ways women are exploited. This book came up during the second wave feminism, referred to lecture number 7. The introductory chapter had a very beautiful kind of recollection from Beauvoir's perspective. That particular chapter has something called a story from Beauvoir's childhood. When Beauvoir was born, she was in a the hospital. Her aunt came to visit her, and she said that when my aunt came to visit me, I was there in a blanket, wrapped up in a blanket beside a baby boy. So, the children in France, when they are born, they have a tag attached to their leg. So, in the girl's tag, it was written, "It is a girl," and in the boy's tag, it was written, "I am a boy." So, girl is always an object, boy is a subject. A very interesting story which has been narrated. She also writes, "One is not born a woman, but becomes one." This is something which refers to the society, the upbringing, the culture, all of these taken into account makes a woman. Women are not born, they are born as children, but under all these factors, they become a woman. Women's subjugation and its relationship with economy. If you read about the second sex, you will get to know that there are a lot of areas of economy that has been explained by Simone de Beauvoir, where women are actually forced into monogamy, because if they are in a polygamous relationship, then the father will not know who is the real father of the child she is going to bear, and thereby the property that the child is going to get may not be given, or the decision may not be taken very easily if the girl is in a polygamous relationship. Therefore, the institution of marriage, commitment and monogamy came into existence. Of course, patriarchal law, the book talks about the patriarchal law, the law of the land, polygamy as natural and monogamy as cultural. There is this separate lecture on the natural and cultural debate. You can refer to that and understand this point in a better way. The last person that we are taking here today in this lecture is Kate Millett. She is an American feminist writer, educator, artist and activist. She wrote a book called Sexual Politics. And it is a criticism on these writers, D.H. Lawrence, Henry Miller, Norman Mailer. These three writers were very influential writers of their day. But let me tell you, Henry Miller's books were banned in USA. Norman Mailer was the Pulitzer Prize winner. That means they were very influential, and D.H. Lawrence is, of course, he has a great influence on English literature. Everybody who is studying English literature have at one point of time come across maybe Sons and Lovers, Women in Love, all those things, all those novels are very prominent. They talk about the industrial England and France and other places. Here Kate Millett took up the guts and wrote something against these popular writers. She said that these writers obsess over sexualized male violence with the notion that masculinity must be demonstrable at all times, and a great fear of homosexuality undermining American virility. In order to show that I am not homosexual, I am going to treat a woman like trash. I am going to beat a woman, I am going to rape and molest a woman because I am masculine. I have to show my masculinity. So this was the idea all of the writers had and showed in their literary works. So when you read Kate Millett's Sexual Politics, you will come to know more about that. At the end, Kate Millett appreciates Jean Genet. Jean Genet is a French author. He was homosexual, for which he was imprisoned, but he nonetheless wrote about homosexuality, wrote plays about homosexuality, literature on homosexuality, and that is why Kate Millett treats Jean Genet's work as a homosexuality as a tool to attack the manipulative heterosexuality. So this person, Jean Genet, he actually treated homosexuality as very natural, and it does not have anything to do with femininity or masculinity. Moreover, toxic masculinity. In all these writers' works, whenever these writers were writing, they showed women as objects. that are to be, treated either nicely or tortured. There was no middle path. They were not treated as human beings, human creatures. They were just women with bodies, that's all. So Kate Millett said that no, that is the problem. If you are portraying women as bodies, then you are doing something wrong. So she took up homosexuality from Jean Genet and his works, appreciated it, showed it as a contradiction to these authors, and created a manifesto that this is how literature should function. Thank you for bearing with me. I hope that you now have a clear idea about these works. These are very influential works. Later on, feminists like Betty Friedan and others who contributed much to the movement of sensitization of women's writing and women's mentality psychology borrowed a great deal from these works. I hope you read them and go through them separately and also collectively. Thank you. See you in the next lecture.